Episode number 2. Cambodia and Thailand, a long shared history. Welcome back to our channel. Tonight, we're embarking on a special journey through time, a peaceful exploration of the long, intertwined history of two neighboring nations, Cambodia and Thailand. I want to say this, history is rarely simple. The story we're about to share spans over 1,000 years, encompasses vast empires and small kingdoms, moments of conflict and centuries of cultural exchange. Our goal tonight is not to take sides or assign blame, but to understand, to see how these two nations, these two peoples, have been connected since long before modern borders were drawn. This is a bedtime history episode, designed for calm reflection and learning. Whether you're drifting off to sleep or simply seeking to understand this complex relationship, we invite you to settle in, get comfortable, and let the story unfold at its own gentle pace. Before we begin, if you enjoy gentle history stories to help you relax and fall asleep, please consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss future episodes. We'll begin in the early centuries of the Common Era, when the first kingdoms were taking shape in Southeast Asia. We'll witness the rise of the magnificent Khmer Empire and its capital at Angkor. We'll see the emergence of Thai kingdoms like Sukhothai and Ayutthaya. We'll explore the complex centuries that followed, times of both conflict and cooperation, cultural borrowing and political rivalry. We'll examine how colonial powers drew the borders that still shape disputes today, and we'll bring the story up to the present moment, considering the challenges and opportunities that Cambodia and Thailand face as neighbors in the 21st century. Throughout this journey, we'll return again and again to certain themes: the rivers that connect these lands, the temples that stand as witnesses to history, and the cultural traditions that both nations share, traditions of art, dance, Buddhism, and literature that transcend political boundaries. A few notes before we begin: this episode is based on documented historical sources, archaeological evidence, and scholarly research. When discussing disputed territories or contested interpretations, we'll present multiple perspectives. Our sources include academic histories, international court documents, and the work of archaeologists and historians who have devoted their lives to understanding this region. If you enjoy this episode, please consider subscribing to our channel. We create peaceful, well-researched history content designed for relaxation and learning. Your support helps us continue making these episodes. Now, let's begin our journey. Let's travel back over 2,000 years, to a time when the Mekong River flowed through a landscape just beginning to feel the touch of civilization. Chapter 1. Dawn of Civilizations, Early Southeast Asia. Before the great temples rose above the jungle canopy, before kingdoms drew their borders across river valleys, Southeast Asia was a landscape of gradual transformation. The monsoon rains fell as they always had, the Mekong carried its sediments to the sea, and communities along these waterways began to weave the first threads of what would become complex civilizations. To understand the relationship between Cambodia and Thailand, we must first understand the land itself, a region defined by water. The Mekong River, one of the world's great waterways, originates in the Tibetan Plateau and flows nearly 5,000 kilometers before reaching the South China Sea. Along its journey, it creates the conditions for life, civilization, and connection. During the monsoon season, typically from May to October, the Mekong swells dramatically, flooding vast areas and depositing rich alluvial soil. This annual cycle made the region extraordinarily fertile, capable of supporting dense populations through intensive wet rice cultivation. The Tunnel Sap Lake in central Cambodia demonstrates this hydrological drama. During the dry season, the lake covers roughly 2,500 square kilometers. But when monsoon floods surge down the Mekong, the river's flow actually reverses the Tunnel Sap River, causing the lake to expand to over 16,000 square kilometers, more than 6 times its dry season size. This creates one of the world's richest inland fisheries and provides ideal conditions for rice cultivation in the surrounding floodplains. Understanding this environmental context is crucial, for the civilizations that would arise here were fundamentally shaped by their relationship with water. In the early centuries of the Common Era, the region we now call Cambodia and Thailand was home to several emerging polities. Among the earliest was Funan, a trading kingdom centered in the Mekong Delta, which flourished from roughly the 1st to 6th centuries CE. Chinese chronicles, our primary written sources for this period, describe Funan as a prosperous state engaged in maritime trade, connecting the Indian Ocean world with China. The Chinese diplomat Kong Tai visited Funan in the 3rd century and reported on its ports, its Indian-influenced culture, and its role in the lucrative trade networks that moved spices, textiles, and precious goods across maritime Asia. Archaeological evidence supports and expands upon these textual accounts. Excavations at sites like Oceo and southern Vietnam have revealed a sophisticated urban center with brick structures, canals for transportation and irrigation, and artifacts from as far away as Rome. Roman coins and Mediterranean jewelry found in the Mekong Delta testify to the remarkable reach of ancient trade networks. Funan's merchants served as intermediaries, their ports offering safe harbor and commercial opportunities for traders from India, China, and maritime Southeast Asia. The influence of Indian civilization on Funan was profound and would shape the entire region's subsequent development. Indian merchants and Brahmins brought with them Sanskrit language, Hindu religious texts and practices, concepts of divine kingship, and administrative models. This was not conquest or colonization in any modern sense, but rather a gradual cultural transmission facilitated by trade, intermarriage, and the voluntary adoption of practices that rulers found useful for legitimizing their authority and organizing their states. As Funan's power waned in the 6th century, for reasons still debated by historians, possibly including environmental changes, shifts in trade routes, or political instability, another entity emerged to prominence, Chenla. Chinese sources describe Chenla as initially a vassal state of Funan that eventually superseded its former overlord. Centered further inland, in what is now northern Cambodia and southern Laos, Chenla represented a shift in the basis of power from maritime trade to control of agricultural lands and the rivers that sustained them. Chenla is sometimes described by historians as having split into two entities in the 8th century, Land Chenla in the north and Water Chenla in the south, though this division may reflect Chinese categorization more than political reality. What's clear is that this period saw the consolidation of settlements along the Mekong and its tributaries, the development of irrigation systems, and the construction of early temples that presaged the architectural achievements to come. The religious landscape during this period was diverse and syncretic. Hinduism, particularly devotion to Shiva and Vishnu, was practiced alongside Buddhism and indigenous animist traditions. Temples served as religious centers but also as nodes of political and economic power, places where rulers demonstrated their devotion and capability, where surplus agricultural production could be stored and redistributed, and where literacy and religious knowledge were preserved by Brahmin priests and Buddhist monks. The Chao Phraya Basin to the west, in present-day central Thailand, was meanwhile home to Mon-speaking peoples who established their own networks of settlement and trade. The Mon, whose cultural influence would be felt throughout mainland Southeast Asia, had their own connections to Indian civilization and developed sophisticated urban centers. Dvaravati, a Mon kingdom or cultural sphere that flourished from the 6th to 11th centuries in central Thailand, left behind Buddhist temples, sculpture, and inscriptions that reveal a civilization with its own artistic traditions while sharing in the broader cultural currents flowing from India. These early Mon communities would later interact extensively with emerging Khmer civilization, creating layers of cultural exchange that persist to this day. The Mon script influenced the development of both Khmer and Thai writing systems. Mon Buddhist practices and iconography shaped religious traditions throughout the region. In many ways, the cultural landscape of early Southeast Asia was characterized by overlapping zones of influence rather than clear boundaries, a pattern quite different from modern nation-states. Archaeological research over the past century has revealed that these early civilizations were more sophisticated than once thought. Pre-Angkorian sites throughout Cambodia show evidence of organized urban planning, with moats and reservoirs demonstrating early mastery of water management. Brick temples, though smaller than what would come later, already displayed the architectural sophistication that would culminate in Angkor. Inscriptions in Sanskrit and early Khmer document land grants to temples, records of royal lineages, and religious dedications. The landscape itself shaped these early developments in profound ways. The annual flooding of the Tunnel Sap Lake, the vast floodplains of the Chao Phraya, and the intricate tributaries of the Mekong created environments where wet rice cultivation could support growing populations. But this abundance required management. Mastery of water, through irrigation, reservoir construction, and understanding seasonal patterns, became the foundation of power. Rulers who could organize labor to build water management systems, who could predict and prepare for floods, and who could ensure reliable harvests gained legitimacy and authority. The transition from these early kingdoms to what would become the Khmer Empire was gradual. By the late 8th century, the political landscape of Cambodia was fragmented, with various regional powers competing for dominance. Into this context stepped a figure who would transform the region's history, Jayavarman II, who around the year 802 CE would declare independence from Javanese overlordship, according to later inscriptions, and establish the ritual foundations of what historians call the Khmer Empire. But before we move to that pivotal moment, it's worth pausing to appreciate what these early centuries established. The patterns set in the Funan and Chenla periods, the integration of Indian cultural elements with local traditions, the importance of controlling water resources and rice production, the use of temple construction to demonstrate royal power and piety, the participation in far-reaching trade networks, all these would characterize the civilization that followed. The cultural DNA of classical Southeast Asian civilization was formed in these early centuries, creating a foundation upon which the magnificent temples and powerful kingdoms of the next era would be built. As the 8th century drew to a close, the stage was set for a civilization that would leave its mark across the entire region. The rivers continued their patient work, carrying silt and stories, while temple builders prepared to raise monuments that would endure for over a millennium. The scene was set for one of history's great civilizations to emerge from these river valleys and transform the cultural and political landscape of Southeast Asia. Chapter 2. The Rise of the Khmer Empire, 802 to 1200. In the year 802 CE, according to inscriptions discovered centuries later, a king named Jayavarman II performed a ritual that historians mark as the founding moment of the Khmer Empire. The ceremony, held on Phnom Kulen, a mountain range northeast of what would become Angkor, established the concept of the Devaraja, the god-king, linking divine authority with earthly rule. This ideological innovation, drawing on Hindu concepts of divine kingship but adapted to local circumstances, would power an empire that came to dominate mainland Southeast Asia for centuries. The significance of this ritual extends beyond its religious meaning. By declaring himself a universal monarch and performing rites that freed the land from foreign allegiance, the inscriptions mention Javanese overlordship. Though the historical reality of this relationship is debated, Jayavarman II was making a political statement about sovereignty and independence. He was establishing not just a kingdom but a new cosmic order, with himself as the earthly manifestation of divine power specifically associated with Shiva, though later Khmer kings would associate themselves with different deities. Jayavarman II established several capitals during his reign before his successors settled on the region near the Tunnel Sap Lake that would become Angkor. The choice of location was brilliant from a strategic and economic perspective. The Tunnel Sap's unique hydrology, its dramatic seasonal expansion and contraction, created ideal conditions for rice cultivation. The surrounding plains could support intensive agriculture. The nearby Kulen Hills provided stone for construction and water sources that could be channeled for irrigation. And the location was relatively central, allowing for control of both riverine trade routes and overland connections. From this base near the Tunnel Sap, the Khmer Empire expanded steadily over the following centuries. At its height, particularly during the reigns of Suryavarman II, 1113 to 1150, and Jayavarman VII, 1181 to 1218, Khmer authority extended over much of modern Cambodia, significant portions of Thailand including the Korat Plateau and areas reaching toward the Chao Phraya Valley, parts of Laos along the Mekong, and regions of southern Vietnam. The empire's reach was marked not by firm linear borders, that concept would come much later, but by networks of temples, administrative centers, and tributary relationships. The expansion of Khmer power into what is now Thailand deserves particular attention, given our focus on the Cambodia-Thailand relationship.
The archaeological evidence is overwhelming. Khmer-style temples are found throughout northeastern and central Thailand.
These are not minor outposts but substantial religious complexes built in the classic Angkorian architectural style, with inscriptions in Sanskrit and Khmer documenting dedications by Khmer officials and local rulers who acknowledged Khmer overlordship.
Consider Phai Mai, located in present-day Nakhon Ratchasima province in northeastern Thailand.
This temple complex, built primarily in the late 11th and early 12th centuries, is one of the most important Khmer monuments outside of Cambodia proper. Connected to Angkor by an ancient road, Phai Mai was a significant regional center.
Its temple, though smaller than Angkor Wat, displays similar architectural principles and artistic sophistication. The site demonstrates that these weren't frontier outposts but integral parts of Khmer civilization.
Similarly, Phanom Rung in Buriram province is a spectacular Khmer temple complex situated on an extinct volcano. Built between the 10th and 13th centuries, its elevated position provided both practical defense and symbolic importance. Temples on mountains represented Mount Meru, the cosmic center in Hindu and Buddhist cosmology. The long processional walkway leading to the temple, the intricate stone carvings of Hindu epics, and the careful astronomical alignment of the complex all speak to the resources and planning invested in these provincial centers.
These temples in Thailand were not anomalies but part of a broader pattern.
Throughout the Korat Plateau and extending towards central Thailand, dozens of Khmer temples demonstrate the empire's extensive presence. Some were built by Khmer officials sent from Angkor. Others were constructed by local rulers who had accepted Khmer suzerainty and adopted Khmer culture. The relationship between center and periphery in the Khmer Empire was complex. Local elites maintained their positions but participated in the empire's cultural, religious, and political systems. The architectural achievements of this period remain among humanity's most remarkable.
Angkor Wat, constructed under Suryavarman II in the early 12th century, stands as the largest religious monument in the world.
The temple complex covers over 160 hectares, and its construction required extraordinary resources and organization. Estimates suggest that the sandstone blocks used in its construction, quarried from Phnom Kulen over 50 kilometers away, weigh approximately 5 to 10 million tons. The logistics of quarrying, transporting, and precisely placing these massive stones represent an engineering achievement comparable to the Egyptian pyramids.
The temple's design embodies cosmic symbolism. The 5 towers represent Mount Meru's 5 peaks.
The surrounding moat symbolizes the cosmic ocean. The galleries contain nearly 2,000 square meters of bas-reliefs depicting scenes from Hindu epics, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, as well as historical processions showing Suryavarman II's court and army. These reliefs offer invaluable glimpses into Khmer society. We see the king on his elephant, surrounded by ministers and Brahmin priests. We see soldiers with distinctive hairstyles and weapons. We see musicians and dancers. We see the common people alongside deities and demons.
Originally dedicated to Vishnu, unusual for a state temple, as most Khmer kings favored Shiva. Angkor Wat was both a religious monument and a political statement.
It demonstrated the king's ability to marshal resources, organize labor, and create something of extraordinary beauty and scale. It linked the king with the divine realm and presented Khmer civilization as a cosmic power, not merely a political one. But Angkor Wat, though the most famous, was merely one temple among hundreds. Jayavarman VII, who ruled from 1181 to approximately 1218, undertook perhaps the most extensive building program in Khmer history. After repelling a Cham invasion, the Cham kingdom, located in what is now central and southern Vietnam, was a recurring rival and sometimes ally of the Khmer. Jayavarman VII transformed Angkor and changed the state religion. He built Angkor Thom, a vast walled city, at whose center stood the Bayon Temple. The Bayon is instantly recognizable for its towers decorated with enormous stone faces, their serene expressions gazing in all directions. These faces, numbering over 200 across the temple's many towers, are thought to represent the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, though they may also bear the likeness of Jayavarman VII himself, an intentional blending of the divine and royal personae. Jayavarman VII was a Buddhist, specifically a Mahayana Buddhist, and his reign marked a shift in state religion.
However, this shift was not absolute. Hinduism remained influential, and the two traditions coexisted, often syncretized in practice. The Bayon itself demonstrates this complexity, with its bas-reliefs showing both Hindu deities and Buddhist imagery, alongside scenes of daily life and historical battles. His building program extended far beyond Angkor Thom. He constructed Preah Khan, a vast temple complex that served multiple functions: monastery, university, and city. He built Ta Prohm, famous today for the massive trees whose roots embrace its stones, creating a dramatic interplay between nature and architecture. He established hospitals throughout the kingdom. Inscriptions record that he built 102 hospitals, an extraordinary public health initiative for the time. He constructed rest houses along the empire's roads to facilitate travel and trade. This infrastructure development reveals something crucial about the Khmer Empire. It was not simply a collection of temples and royal monuments, but a functioning state with administrative systems, economic networks, and public services. The roads that connected Angkor to provincial centers like Phai My weren't mere paths but engineered routes with bridges and rest houses. The water management system wasn't just religious symbolism but practical infrastructure supporting agriculture and urban life. The hydraulic system deserves particular attention, as it was fundamental to Khmer power. The Khmer developed an elaborate network of reservoirs, baray, canals, and moats that served multiple purposes. The largest reservoirs, like the West Baray measuring 8 kilometers long and 2 kilometers wide, could store enormous quantities of water. These served as water sources during the dry season, enabling multiple rice harvests annually. They also represented the cosmic ocean in the empire's religious geography, with the temple mountains rising from them like Mount Meru from the primordial waters. Recent archaeological research using radar and LiDAR technology has revealed that Angkor was far larger than previously understood. The area around the major temples was actually a vast urban complex covering over 1,000 square kilometers, making it one of the largest pre-industrial cities in the world. This urban sprawl included neighborhoods, markets, ponds, and an intricate network of canals and roads. The population estimates vary, but at its peak, Greater Angkor may have been home to 750,000 people, a staggering number for a medieval city. The empire's success rested on agricultural productivity enabled by water management, but also on trade and tribute. Khmer merchants participated in regional and international trade networks. Chinese ceramics found at Angkor attest to trade with China. Inscriptions mention merchants from Kampa and other regions. The empire exported forest products, resins, aromatic woods, animal products, as well as rice and other agricultural goods. In return, Khmer elites acquired luxury items, Chinese ceramics and silks, Indian textiles, precious metals. The cultural and intellectual life of the empire was sophisticated. Sanskrit remained the language of religious and official inscriptions, though Khmer was increasingly used. This bilingualism reflected the empire's dual cultural heritage, drawing on Indian civilization while developing distinctively Khmer cultural forms. Literature flourished, though most has been lost. We know from later traditions that versions of the Ramayana and Mahabharata were adapted into Khmer, creating the literary traditions that continue today. Religious life was rich and complex. Hinduism and Buddhism coexisted and influenced each other. Temples served as centers of learning where Brahmin priests and Buddhist monks preserved and transmitted knowledge. Temple dancers, the ancestors of Cambodia's classical dance tradition, performed rituals that honored the gods and entertained the court. Music, sculpture, painting, all the arts flourished under royal patronage. The Khmer Empire at its height represented one of the great civilizations of the medieval world, comparable in its achievements to contemporary European kingdoms, Chinese dynasties, or Islamic caliphates. Its architectural legacy alone would ensure its place in history. But understanding this empire is also crucial for understanding the later relationship between Cambodia and Thailand, because the memory of this empire, its extent, its power, its cultural achievements would shape nationalist narratives in both countries centuries later. By the late 12th century, the empire had reached its maximum extent and splendor under Jayavarman VII. Yet the very factors that enabled this expansion, the water systems requiring constant maintenance,
the extensive building programs demanding enormous resources and labor, the military campaigns on multiple fronts also created vulnerabilities. The story of how this great empire gradually transformed and eventually declined would become intertwined with the emergence of new powers to the north and west, where Tai-speaking peoples were beginning to establish their own kingdoms. The temples stood beneath the tropical sun, their stones gradually stained by lichens and weathered by rain, bearing witness to the height of Khmer civilization even as the political landscape around them began to shift. The Tunnel Sap continued its annual cycle of expansion and contraction, the Mekong flowed toward the sea, and in the forests and mountains to the north, new peoples were preparing to write their own chapters in Southeast Asian history. Chapter 3. Early Thai/Siamese Emergence, Sukhothai and Beyond. While the Khmer Empire flourished at Angkor, significant demographic and political changes were unfolding to the north. Tai-speaking peoples, originating from what is now southern China and the uplands of mainland Southeast Asia, had been gradually migrating southward for centuries. This migration was not a sudden invasion but a slow, complex process of population movement, settlement, and integration into existing societies. By the 13th century, these migrations and the establishment of Thai polities would fundamentally reshape the regional balance of power. The origins of the Thai peoples have been debated by scholars for decades. Linguistic evidence suggests that Thai languages form a family distinct from but related to Chinese. Archaeological and historical evidence points to origins in what is now Guangxi and Yunnan provinces in southern China. From these upland regions, Tai-speaking groups gradually moved southward, driven by various factors: population pressure, conflicts with Chinese expansion, and the attraction of the fertile lowlands of mainland Southeast Asia. This migration occurred over many centuries, perhaps beginning as early as the first millennium CE. Thai groups moved into areas that were already inhabited by Mon peoples in the Chao Phraya Valley, by Khmer in the northeast, by various upland groups in the mountains. The process involved both conflict and integration. Thai migrants sometimes displaced existing populations, but more often they settled alongside them, creating mixed communities where different ethnic groups coexisted and intermarried. Over time, distinctly Thai political entities emerged from this complex ethnic landscape. The Kingdom of Sukhothai, founded around 1238, represents a pivotal moment in this process. According to Thai historiography, particularly the chronicles compiled in later centuries, two Thai chieftains named Kun Bang Klang Hau and Kun Fa Muang declared independence from Khmer overlordship and established Sukhothai as the first Thai kingdom in the region. One of them took the royal name Sri Indraditya and became the kingdom's first king. The extent and nature of Khmer political control in this area before Sukhothai's founding remains a subject of scholarly discussion. Some historians argue that the region was under direct Khmer administration, with Khmer officials governing from provincial centers. Others suggest that Khmer influence was more indirect, that local Thai chiefs acknowledged Khmer suzerainty through tribute but maintained considerable autonomy. The truth likely varied by location and time period, with some areas more fully integrated into the Khmer state than others. What's clear is that Sukhothai emerged in a region long influenced by Khmer culture. The Thai founders of Sukhothai didn't create their kingdom from nothing, rather, they built upon existing administrative structures, religious institutions, and cultural traditions that had developed under Khmer influence. This inheritance would profoundly shape the emerging Thai/Thai civilization. Sukhothai's location in the upper Chao Phraya Valley gave it access to fertile plains ideal for rice cultivation and to trade routes connecting various regions. The city itself was carefully planned, with walls, moats, and a grid pattern of streets. At its center stood Buddhist temples and the royal palace. The urban planning showed clear Khmer influence even as it developed distinctively Thai characteristics. The kingdom's most celebrated ruler, Ramkhamhaeng, his name meaning Rama the Bold, reigned approximately from 1279 to 1298. Ramkhamhaeng became a legendary figure in Thai history, celebrated in later chronicles and nationalist narratives as a wise and benevolent monarch who established the foundations of Thai civilization. The famous Ramkhamhaeng inscription of 1292, carved on a stone stele, presents an idealized vision of his kingdom and his rule. This inscription, now kept in Bangkok's National Museum, is written in what's considered the earliest form of the Thai script. The stone describes Sukhothai as a land of abundance and justice. In the water there are fish, in the fields there is rice, it proclaims. It presents Ramkhamhaeng as a father to his people, accessible and fair, who hung a bell at the palace gate so that any subject with a grievance could ring it and receive the king's personal attention. While historians debate whether the inscription accurately represents historical reality, some scholars have even questioned its authenticity. Though most now accept it as genuine, it nevertheless reveals how Sukhothai wished to be remembered and what values it claimed to embody. The creation of the Thai script attributed to Ramkhamhaeng deserves special attention, as it represents a crucial moment in Thai cultural development. The script was adapted from Khmer writing, which itself had been adapted from Mon script, which ultimately derived from Indian scripts brought by Buddhist monks and Brahmin priests. This chain of transmission illustrates the layered nature of cultural development in Southeast Asia, each civilization building upon and transforming what came before. The Thai script's adaptation from Khmer shows both continuity and innovation. Many letter forms are clearly derived from Khmer models, but modifications were made to better represent the tones and phonetics of the Thai language. This wasn't simple copying but creative adaptation, taking a writing system designed for one language and modifying it to serve another. The development of writing was crucial for state administration, religious transmission, and cultural preservation. With a script, Sukhothai could keep records, issue royal decrees, and create a literary tradition. The cultural borrowing from the Khmer was extensive across many domains. Sukhothai adopted and adapted Khmer administrative structures. The kingdom was organized into provinces with appointed governors, following patterns established in the Khmer Empire. Royal ceremonies, court rituals, and concepts of kingship all showed Khmer influence, though transformed in a Thai context. The Thai language itself absorbed numerous Khmer loanwords, particularly in domains like religion, governance, arts, and technology, areas where Khmer civilization had developed sophisticated vocabularies. Religious practices also reflected this cultural synthesis. Sukhothai became a center of Theravada Buddhism, which was gaining prominence throughout mainland Southeast Asia during this period. The form of Buddhism practiced at Sukhothai arrived through multiple routes, from Mon communities to the west, from Sri Lanka via Mon intermediaries, and through the existing Buddhist infrastructure of the region that had developed under both Khmer and Mon influence. Theravada Buddhism, with its emphasis on individual spiritual development and its more accessible path to merit-making compared to Mahayana Buddhism or Hindu practices, appealed to both rulers and common people. For rulers, Buddhism provided legitimacy, the king as a righteous Buddhist monarch protecting the faith and enabling his subjects to make merit. For ordinary people, Buddhism offered a clear path to spiritual advancement through supporting monks, building temples, and following the precepts. The Buddhist architecture at Sukhothai shows this cultural blending beautifully. The distinctive lotus bud chedi, stupa, style developed at Sukhothai drew on Sri Lankan models but was executed with Khmer architectural knowledge and local aesthetic preferences. The walking Buddha statues created at Sukhothai represent an innovation in Buddhist iconography. Previous traditions had shown Buddha seated or standing still, but Sukhothai artists created images of Buddha in graceful motion, symbolizing his journey of teaching. These images, with their fluid lines and serene expressions, became iconic in Thai Buddhist art. Yet Sukhothai was not the only Thai polity emerging during this period. To the north, the Kingdom of Lanna was founded in 1262 by King Mangrai, who established his capital at Chiang Mai in 1296. Lanna developed its own cultural sphere while maintaining connections with Sukhothai and other kingdoms. The northern Thai language, architecture, and customs that developed in Lanna showed distinct characteristics while sharing in the broader Thai cultural family. The relationship between these early Thai kingdoms and the Khmer Empire was complex and evolved over time. Initially, as Sukhothai established itself, the Khmer Empire was still powerful under the late Angkorian kings. The two polities likely maintained diplomatic relations, with Sukhothai perhaps acknowledging some form of Khmer overlordship while exercising practical independence. Trade certainly continued. Goods, people, and ideas flowed between regions regardless of political boundaries. As the 13th century progressed and the Khmer Empire faced increasing challenges, a topic we'll explore more in later chapters, the space for Thai kingdoms to expand grew.
Sukhothai extended its influence southward and eastward, though the extent of its territorial control remains debated.
The Ramkhamhaeng inscription claims vast territories under Sukhothai's sway, but historians are skeptical of these claims, noting that the inscription likely overstates the kingdom's reach as a form of royal propaganda. The cultural transmission during this period flowed in multiple directions, creating a genuine synthesis. While Thai kingdoms adopted much from Khmer civilization, they also brought their own traditions, social structures, and linguistic heritage. The result was not simply Khmer civilization with Thai rulers, but new cultural forms that combined elements from multiple sources. The Theravada Buddhism that flourished in Sukhothai, for instance, differed in important ways from the Mahayana Buddhism and Hinduism of Angkor, even though it built upon the existing Buddhist infrastructure and practices of the region. The social organization of Thai kingdoms also had distinctive features. Some historians argue that Thai societies traditionally had more fluid social hierarchies and more personal relationships between rulers and subjects compared to the more elaborate court hierarchies of Angkor. The image of Ramkhamhaeng with his bell, personally dispensing justice to any subject, contrasts with the distant, divine monarchs of Angkor who were rarely seen by common people. Whether this represents actual differences in governance or merely different ways of presenting kingship remains a matter of scholarly debate. By the early 14th century, Sukhothai had established itself as a significant power in the upper Chao Phraya Valley. It had developed a distinctive cultural identity while maintaining connections with the broader region. Mon communities, Khmer populations, and Thai groups coexisted within and around Sukhothai's sphere of influence, creating a multicultural landscape where ethnic boundaries were often blurred.
However, Sukhothai's dominance would prove relatively brief. By the mid-14th century, the kingdom's power was declining.
The reasons for this decline mirror patterns seen in other Southeast Asian kingdoms: succession disputes, the difficulty of maintaining control over distant provinces, and the emergence of rival powers. In Sukhothai's case, the most significant rival would be a new kingdom forming to the south, Ayutthaya, founded in 1351. As Sukhothai declined through the late 14th and early 15th centuries, it increasingly fell under Ayutthaya's influence, eventually being absorbed entirely.
But Sukhothai's legacy endured.
Its art, its script, its model of Buddhist kingship, and its place in Thai historical memory as the first Thai kingdom ensured that Sukhothai would remain central to Thai cultural identity even after its political power faded. The emergence of Thai kingdoms like Sukhothai and Lanna represented a fundamental shift in the regional balance of power. Whereas the early centuries of the millennium had been dominated by Mon and Khmer civilizations, by 1300 Thai-speaking polities were established players. These kingdoms existed in a complex landscape where Mon, Khmer, and Thai populations intermingled, where cultural influences flowed in multiple directions, and where political boundaries remained fluid and contested. As Sukhothai's glory faded, the waters of the Chao Phraya continued their journey to the sea, carrying with them the sediments of change. New powers were rising, and the next great Thai kingdom, Ayutthaya, would engage even more directly with the Khmer Empire, setting in motion conflicts and exchanges that would shape the region for centuries to come.
Chapter 4.
Ayutthaya emerges, 1351 to 1431. In 1351, a new kingdom was proclaimed on an island where the Chao Phraya, Pasak, and Lopburi rivers meet, a location that would prove strategically brilliant. Ayutthaya, named after Ayodhya, the legendary birthplace of the Hindu god Rama in the epic Ramayana, would become one of Southeast Asia's most powerful and enduring states. Its story over the next 4 centuries would profoundly shape the region, and its early confrontation with the Khmer Empire set patterns that echo into the present day. The founder of Ayutthaya was a prince known as Yuthong, who took the royal name Ramathibodi I upon establishing the kingdom. The circumstances of Ayutthaya's founding are somewhat obscured by later chronicles that sought to glorify the kingdom's origins, but we can discern that it emerged from the consolidation of several smaller Thai polities in the lower Chao Phraya Valley.
Yuthong may have been connected to the ruling families of both Sukhothai and the Mon kingdom of Lavo, centered at Lopburi.
This mixed heritage, Thai, Mon, and connected to earlier Khmer-influenced polities, would characterize Ayutthaya throughout its existence. The strategic location Ramathibodi chose for his capital deserves emphasis,
as geography would play a crucial role in Ayutthaya's success. The city sat on an island formed by the confluence of 3 rivers, providing natural defenses. Attackers would need to cross water to assault the city. The location was far enough upriver to be safe from tidal surges and coastal storms, yet close enough to the sea for maritime trade. The surrounding central plains, enriched by annual floods, were among the most fertile in Southeast Asia, capable of producing rice surpluses that could feed a large population and support trade. From this base, Ayutthaya quickly established itself as a major power. Ramathibodi I set about creating institutions that would last for centuries. He promulgated legal codes that drew on various sources, the Hindu law text known as the Dharmashastra, Buddhist precepts, and indigenous Thai customs. This legal synthesis reflected Ayutthaya's multicultural character, a Thai Buddhist kingdom that nevertheless incorporated Hindu concepts of kingship and justice, operating in a region long influenced by both traditions. The administrative system Ramathibodi established divided the kingdom into provinces under appointed governors, with elaborate court hierarchies defining ranks and responsibilities. The system showed Khmer influence but adapted to Thai traditions and local conditions. Unlike the divine kingship of Angkor, where the ruler was conceptualized as a god-king, Ayutthaya's monarchy positioned itself within a Theravada Buddhist framework, the king as a righteous Buddhist monarch who had accumulated merit through past lives and who ruled as a defender of the faith and protector of his people. Theravada Buddhism became the state religion under Ramathibodi I, though Hindu Brahmins continued to play important roles in royal ceremonies and court ritual. This religious duality, Buddhist in fundamental orientation but retaining Hindu elements in court culture, characterized Ayutthaya and later Thai kingdoms. The synthesis reflected the region's long history of religious interaction and the practical advantages of maintaining multiple sources of legitimacy and expertise. Ayutthaya's early expansion was rapid. The kingdom absorbed or subordinated neighboring polities, including eventually reducing Sukhothai to vassal status. Sukhothai became a tributary state of Ayutthaya by the late 14th century and was fully incorporated in the 15th century. Ayutthaya also extended its influence southward toward the Malay Peninsula and established control over coastal regions that provided access to maritime trade. The kingdom's commercial orientation distinguished it from many earlier mainland Southeast Asian states. Ayutthaya actively promoted trade, welcoming foreign merchants and establishing itself as a major entrepot. By the 15th century, Chinese, Japanese, Persian, Indian, and later European traders had established communities in Ayutthaya. The kingdom exported rice, the surplus from the fertile central plains, along with dried fish, animal hides, forest products like lac and benzoin, and luxury items. In return, merchants brought Chinese ceramics and silk, Indian textiles, Persian goods, and later European firearms and other manufactured products. This mercantile orientation generated wealth that funded Ayutthaya's military and its magnificent court culture. The cosmopolitan character of the capital, with its diverse merchant communities, exposed the kingdom to ideas and influences from across Asia and eventually beyond. Ayutthaya was not an isolated kingdom but a node in vast trading networks, and this international engagement shaped its development. The relationship with the Khmer Empire was from the beginning fraught with tension and ambition. To the east lay Angkor, still a formidable power despite the challenges it faced. The region between Ayutthaya and Angkor, roughly corresponding to present-day eastern Thailand and western Cambodia, became a zone of competition and conflict. Control of this region meant control of agricultural resources, populations, and trade routes. The chronicle histories compiled in later centuries document repeated military campaigns between Ayutthaya and Angkor throughout the late 14th and early 15th centuries. These sources must be read critically. They were compiled long after the events they describe and served purposes of royal propaganda and legitimation. Nevertheless, archaeological evidence, inscriptions, and the basic facts of changing political control confirm that sustained conflict occurred. Ayutthaya's motivations for conflict with the Khmer Empire were multiple and overlapping. There were practical considerations. The territories between the two kingdoms contained valuable resources and populations that could be taxed or mobilized for labor. There were strategic factors. A strong Khmer Empire represented a potential threat to Ayutthaya's eastern frontier. There were economic dimensions. control of territories meant control of trade routes and agricultural surpluses.
And there were ideological and psychological elements, establishing dominance over the Khmer Empire, with its centuries of imperial legacy and magnificent capital, would confirm Ayutthaya's status as the premier power in the region.
From the Khmer perspective, Ayutthaya represented a growing threat.
The Khmer Empire in the late 14th and early 15th centuries faced challenges from multiple directions.
Vietnamese expansion pressed from the east, with the Vietnamese kingdoms of Dai Viet gradually absorbing Kampa and Iang Khmer territories.
Internal instability, succession disputes, the challenges of maintaining the elaborate water management systems, possible environmental pressures weakened the empire.
And now Ayutthaya threatened from the west.
Khmer inscriptions from this period, though less numerous than in earlier centuries, speak of defending the realm and maintaining royal authority. The empire was not yet in terminal decline, it still commanded significant resources and military power, but it was clearly under pressure. The maintenance of Angkor's elaborate infrastructure required continuous investment of resources and labor. Military campaigns to defend or recover territories in multiple directions strained the state's capacities. The military campaigns themselves followed patterns common to Southeast Asian warfare of the period. Armies were raised seasonally, often timing campaigns for the dry season when movement was easier and agricultural demands on the population were lower. Forces consisted of conscripted farmers, professional soldiers, war elephants, and naval elements when operations involved rivers or coastal areas.
Sieges of fortified cities could last months. Success often depended on logistics, the ability to feed an army in enemy territory, as much as on battlefield prowess.
Chronicles describe Ayutthaya forces besieging Angkor on multiple occasions in the late 14th and early 15th centuries. Some of these sieges may have been successful in briefly occupying the city before Khmer forces retook it.
The back-and-forth nature of the conflict suggests that neither side could initially achieve decisive, permanent victory.
Angkor's defenses, its moats, its walls, and the challenges of supplying a besieging army far from Ayutthaya made it difficult to capture and hold. But Ayutthaya's growing power and the Khmer Empire's multiple fronts of conflict gradually shifted the balance.
Contemporary observers noted the changing dynamics.
Chinese sources from the early 15th century describe both Ayutthaya and Angkor, providing external perspectives on these kingdoms. Chinese diplomatic missions visited both capitals, and their accounts offer glimpses of court life, military capabilities, and commercial activities. These sources confirm that both kingdoms were sophisticated states with elaborate court cultures, but they also note Ayutthaya's growing commercial importance and vibrant trade. The period from 1351 to 1431 also witnessed continued cultural exchange despite the military conflicts. Khmer craftsmen, scholars, dancers, and members of religious communities moved between kingdoms, sometimes as captives taken in war but other times through voluntary migration or diplomatic exchange. Ayutthaya's art and architecture from this period show strong Khmer influences even as distinctively Thai styles developed. Temple architecture at Ayutthaya incorporated Khmer elements, the prang, tower, form, decorative motifs, construction techniques, while developing new forms like the distinctive Thai chedi with its bell-shaped profile. The royal ceremonies at Ayutthaya similarly blended traditions. Hindu Brahmins, many originally from Khmer territories or trained in traditions ultimately derived from Angkorian court practices, performed elaborate royal rituals. The vocabulary of Ayutthaya's court, as we noted regarding the Thai language more broadly, incorporated numerous Khmer terms. The patterns of administration, the concepts underlying royal authority, the artistic conventions all showed the deep influence of Khmer civilization even as Ayutthaya was militarily challenging Khmer power. This apparent contradiction, adopting and revering aspects of Khmer culture while fighting Khmer armies, is less paradoxical than it might initially seem. Throughout history, rising powers have often absorbed cultural practices from the civilizations they supplant politically. Rome absorbed Greek culture while dominating Greece militarily. The Mongols adopted many practices from the Chinese civilization they conquered. Ayutthaya's adoption of Khmer cultural elements represented recognition of those elements' value and sophistication, not an acknowledgement of Khmer political authority. By the 1420s, the stage was set for a decisive confrontation. Ayutthaya had consolidated its control over the Chao Phraya Valley, absorbed or subordinated neighboring polities, and built up significant military capabilities. The Khmer Empire, while still formidable, faced compounding challenges.
The Tunnel Sap's fish catch may have been declining due to environmental changes.
The elaborate water management system at Angkor required constant maintenance, and any disruption could affect agricultural productivity. Succession disputes and factional conflicts within the Khmer elite created political instability.
And militarily, the need to defend against threats from multiple directions stretched resources thin.
In 1430 or early 1431, the exact timing is debated, Ayutthaya launched what would prove to be its decisive campaign against Angkor. A large army moved eastward, besieged the capital, and after what chronicles describe as a prolonged siege, captured the city. The fall of Angkor in 1431 would mark a turning point in Southeast Asian history, though its full implications would only become clear over subsequent decades. As we approach that pivotal moment, we should pause to reflect on what these 8 decades from 1351 to 1431 represented. The emergence of Ayutthaya and its sustained conflict with the Khmer Empire was not simply a story of one kingdom conquering another. It represented larger historical forces, demographic shifts as Thai-speaking populations expanded southward, the reorientation of trade networks toward maritime commerce and away from purely inland agricultural bases, the evolution of political institutions and military capabilities, and the complex interactions between adopting cultural influences and asserting political independence. The rivers continued to flow, the Chao Phraya carrying boats laden with trade goods through Ayutthaya's bustling port, the Mekong and its tributaries sustaining the communities around Angkor. In both kingdoms, Buddhist monks chanted prayers, farmers tended rice paddies, artisans created works of beauty, and rulers made decisions that would echo across centuries. The approaching confrontation would reshape the political map, but the cultural connections and human experiences that transcended political boundaries would endure.
Chapter 5. The Fall of Angkor in Shifting Balance, 1431.
The year 1431 marks a watershed in Southeast Asian history, though the full implications of that year's events would only become clear over subsequent decades and even centuries. In that year, after what chronicles describe as a prolonged siege lasting 7 months, Ayutthaya forces captured Angkor, the Khmer capital that had stood for over 6 centuries as one of Asia's greatest cities and a symbol of Khmer imperial power and cultural achievement.
The siege itself must have been a massive undertaking.
Angkor was not a city in the modern sense, it was a vast urban complex spreading over 1,000 square kilometers, with the monumental stone temples at its center surrounded by extensive residential areas, ponds, canals, and agricultural zones. The walled city of Angkor Thom alone, built by Jayavarman VII in the late 12th century, covered 9 square kilometers, surrounded by moats and walls that presented formidable obstacles to attackers. Ayutthaya's forces would have needed to bring a substantial army. Chronicles suggest tens of thousands of soldiers, though such numbers should be treated cautiously as ancient and medieval sources often exaggerated army sizes. The logistics of supplying such a force far from Ayutthaya, through territories that might be hostile or at least ambivalent, presented enormous challenges. The army would have needed regular supplies of rice to feed the troops, plus fodder for elephants and horses. Water sources had to be secured. Supply lines had to be maintained back to Ayutthaya. The siege likely involved surrounding the city to prevent resupply while launching periodic assaults on the walls and gates. Siege equipment, scaling ladders, battering rams, possibly primitive artillery, would have been employed. The defenders of Angkor would have fought from the walls and made sorties to disrupt the besiegers. The protracted nature of the siege suggests that Angkor did not fall quickly or easily, that its defenders were substantial in number and capability.
When the city finally fell, the consequences were immediate and dramatic.
Ayutthaya forces entered Angkor, and according to later chronicles, the Khmer king and many members of the royal court, along with artisans, dancers, scholars, and other specialists, were taken to Ayutthaya. This mass deportation represented not merely a military victory but a deliberate acquisition of human capital, the knowledge, skills, and cultural sophistication that had made Angkor great. The capture of skilled craftsmen was a common practice in Southeast Asian warfare of this period. Artisans who could build temples, sculptors who could create religious images, dancers who knew the classical repertoire, scholars who understood Sanskrit and Pali texts, hydraulic engineers who knew water management, all these were valuable assets. By transferring them to Ayutthaya, the victors strengthened their own kingdom while weakening the conquered one. This practice explains much about how cultural knowledge spread in Southeast Asia, not always peacefully through trade and voluntary exchange, but sometimes through warfare and forced relocation.
The Khmer royal dancers taken to Ayutthaya, for instance, would influence the development of Thai classical dance.
Their movement vocabulary, their costumes, their repertoire of stories drawn from the Ramayana and other epics, all these were absorbed into the emerging Thai classical tradition.
Centuries later, when Cambodians saw Thai classical dance, they recognized elements of their own tradition, while Thais saw it as authentically Thai. Both perceptions contained truth. The tradition had Khmer roots but had been transformed and developed in the Thai context for centuries, becoming genuinely Thai even as it retained its Khmer inheritance. Similarly, Khmer craftsmen influenced Ayutthaya's architecture and sculpture. The prangs, tower temples, that became characteristic of Ayutthaya and later Bangkok architecture showed clear evolution from Khmer models, even as they developed distinctive Thai characteristics. The techniques of stone carving, the decorative motifs, the principles of religious iconography all showed this complex inheritance and transformation. However, the narrative of Angkor's fall in 1431 requires significant nuance and care, as historians have increasingly recognized. The city was not permanently abandoned in 1431. The capture by Ayutthaya was devastating, certainly, but Khmer kings returned to Angkor and maintained a presence there for several more decades. Inscriptions dated to the 1440s and 1450s document royal activities at Angkor. Buddhist monasteries continued to function. The city was not suddenly transformed into an abandoned ruin.
What changed after 1431 was the center of gravity of Khmer political power. The royal capital gradually relocated southward, initially to areas near present-day Phnom Penh, cities like Basin, Sraisanthor, and eventually Luvek and then Udon. This southward movement represented a strategic reorientation driven by multiple factors, not just the military defeat of 1431. Environmental historians and archaeologists have identified several challenges that Angkor faced in its final centuries as a capital. The elaborate water management system upon which the city depended was showing signs of stress. Centuries of intensive agriculture in the watershed may have led to soil degradation and erosion, reducing the system's effectiveness.
Sedimentation in the vast reservoirs could decrease their storage capacity.
The wooden sluices and channels that regulated water flow required constant maintenance and replacement.
Recent paleoclimatic research adds another dimension to our understanding. Studies of tree rings, sediment cores, and stalagmite growth patterns suggest that mainland Southeast Asia experienced significant climate variability in the 14th and 15th centuries.
Periods of severe drought alternated with episodes of intense rainfall and flooding. Such climate instability would have placed enormous stress on a water management system designed for relatively predictable patterns.
A prolonged drought could empty reservoirs and devastate agriculture.
Excessive rainfall could overflow canals, breach dams, and cause destructive floods. If Angkor's hydraulic system began to fail or became unreliable, whether due to environmental degradation, climate variability, or deferred maintenance as resources were diverted to military defense, then the very foundation of the city's prosperity would be undermined. A city designed to support hundreds of thousands of people through intensive wet rice cultivation could not survive without a functioning water system. This doesn't mean the 1431 military defeat wasn't significant, but it suggests that Angkor faced multiple compounding challenges, some environmental and systemic rather than purely military.
The relocation of the Khmer capital southward also reflected changing economic realities.
By the 15th century, maritime trade through the Gulf of Siam and the South China Sea was increasingly important to Southeast Asian economies.
The Mekong Delta and coastal regions near present-day Phnom Penh offered far better access to these maritime networks than inland Angkor.
A capital positioned to engage with maritime trade could tap into the lucrative commerce connecting China, Southeast Asia, India, and beyond. Moving closer to the Mekong Delta also positioned the Khmer court closer to the main river system's connection to the sea while maintaining access to the productive agricultural regions along the Mekong and Tunnel Sap. In this light, the relocation appears not just as flight from Ayutthaya but as adaptation to new geographic and economic realities. Angkor had been brilliantly positioned for an agricultural empire drawing power from intensive rice cultivation. A kingdom seeking to balance agricultural production with active participation in maritime trade needed a different location. The relocation was gradual rather than abrupt, unfolding over several decades. Angkor did not become an abandoned ruin overnight. Local populations remained in the region. Buddhist monasteries continued to function at Angkor for centuries. Indeed, Angkor Wat itself remained an active Buddhist temple and never was truly abandoned. Monks maintained the site, and it remained a destination for pilgrimage. What Angkor ceased to be was the seat of imperial power and administration, the center of a regional empire. From Ayutthaya's perspective, the capture of Angkor in 1431 represented both a symbolic triumph and a practical strategic victory. It established Ayutthaya's dominance in mainland Southeast Asia and enabled the kingdom to present itself as the heir to Angkorian imperial legacy, inheriting not through succession but through conquest and cultural absorption. Ayutthaya could now claim to be the premier power in the region, having defeated the kingdom with the longest imperial pedigree. Yet the relationship between the two kingdoms did not end with the 1431 conquest. Over subsequent decades and centuries, there were periods of Khmer resistance and attempted restoration. The Khmer kingdom, though reduced in territory and power, persisted. Complex negotiations over territories and tributary relationships characterized the ongoing interaction. Sometimes Khmer rulers accepted Ayutthaya's suzerainty, at other times they resisted or sought other protectors. The border regions between the two kingdoms remained contested and fluid. The cultural impact of this period flowed in multiple directions. While Ayutthaya absorbed Khmer influences through the craftsmen and court members it acquired, Khmer culture continued to evolve independently in the relocated capitals. The Cambodian royal court maintained elaborate ceremonies, classical dance traditions, and religious practices that preserved and developed Khmer cultural forms. The famous Cambodian royal ballet traces its lineage through these centuries of adaptation and preservation, maintaining techniques and repertoires that connect contemporary performers with classical Angkorian traditions. The impact on the landscape was also significant. The region between Ayutthaya and the new Khmer centers, roughly corresponding to present-day eastern Thailand and western Cambodia, became a contested zone where local rulers might pay tribute to one power or the other, or attempt to play both sides to maintain autonomy. Villages in these border regions might find themselves under Ayutthaya's authority one decade and Khmer authority the next, depending on the fortunes of war and diplomacy. The population in these border regions was ethnically mixed, with Khmer-speaking communities in what is now Thailand and Thai-speaking communities in what is now Cambodia. This ethnic mixing, which had been occurring for centuries, became even more complex as political boundaries shifted. The concept of a clear, linear border separating two ethnically distinct populations was foreign to this reality. Instead, there were gradients and pockets, overlapping identities, and multiple loyalties. By the mid-15th century, the political map of mainland Southeast Asia had been redrawn. Ayutthaya controlled the Chao Phraya Basin, the Upper Malay Peninsula, and much of what is now central and northeastern Thailand. The Khmer kingdom persisted but with reduced territory, operating from new capitals in the southeastern regions closer to the Mekong Delta and the sea. Both kingdoms would face new challenges in the following centuries, Ayutthaya from Burma to the west, which would become a recurring military threat, and the Khmer kingdom from Vietnamese expansion to the east, which would increasingly pressure Khmer territories. The symbolic and psychological impacts of 1431 would long outlast the immediate military consequences. For Thai historical consciousness, the capture of Angkor became a defining moment, proof of Thai military prowess and the kingdom's rightful position as a regional power. For Cambodian historical consciousness, 1431 marked the beginning of a difficult period when the kingdom that had once dominated the region found itself struggling to maintain independence and territorial integrity against powerful neighbors. Modern historians emphasize that we should understand 1431 not as a simple story of conquest and defeat, but as a complex transition involving military, environmental, economic, and cultural factors.
The fall of Angkor was not the end of Khmer civilization. That civilization continued, adapted, and survived through centuries of challenges.
But it did mark the end of Angkor as the center of a vast mainland empire and the beginning of a new chapter in both Khmer and Thai history. The stone temples at Angkor slowly disappeared beneath encroaching jungle in the centuries that followed. Without the maintenance that an imperial capital received, nature began to reclaim the space. Massive trees took root in temple courtyards, their roots spreading over and through the stonework. The galleries and towers became intertwined with vegetation. Yet they endured, waiting for the attention of archaeologists and historians who would, centuries later, work to understand the civilization that built them. The transformation of Angkor from living capital to sacred landscape symbolized the broader transition Southeast Asia was undergoing, from the classical mainland empires centered on intensive rice agriculture and water management, to a more diverse configuration of regional powers increasingly engaged with maritime commerce and navigating relationships with expanding Vietnamese power from the east and emerging European colonial interests that would, in later centuries, fundamentally reshape the region.
Chapter 6.
Centuries of overlap, tributary relations and cultural exchange.
The centuries following Angkor's decline as an imperial capital, roughly from the mid-15th through the 19th centuries, were marked not by clear-cut divisions between Cambodia and Siam, as Ayutthaya and its successor states came to be known, but by complex, overlapping relationships that shifted with changing circumstances.
Understanding this period is crucial for making sense of the modern Cambodia-Thailand relationship, as many current disputes have roots in this era of fluid boundaries and contested authorities. The concept of overlordship and sovereignty in Southeast Asia during this period differed fundamentally from European notions that would later be imposed through colonialism. Rather than exclusive territorial control with clear linear borders, power in traditional Southeast Asia was often exercised through networks of tributary relationships, personal ties between rulers, and the control of populations more than land per se. A smaller kingdom might acknowledge the suzerainty of a larger power through periodic tribute missions, symbolic acts of deference, provision of military support when requested, and acceptance of the overlord's ceremonial superiority. These tributary relationships were often flexible and practical rather than rigid and ideological.
A vassal state retained considerable internal autonomy, its own ruler, its own administrative systems, its own cultural and religious life.
What it offered the overlord was acknowledgement of superior status, material tribute, which could range from symbolic gifts to substantial payments, and military assistance. In return, the overlord provided protection against external threats and, ideally, mediation in disputes.
Importantly, these relationships were not necessarily exclusive. A smaller kingdom might acknowledge multiple overlords simultaneously, particularly if caught between two larger powers.
This practice, sometimes called dual vassalage or multiple allegiance, seems contradictory from a modern sovereignty perspective but made practical sense in the traditional Southeast Asian context. By acknowledging both neighbors, a small kingdom could potentially play them against each other, seek protection from whichever seemed more threatening at any given moment, and maintain maximum autonomy. Cambodia found itself in precisely this situation for extended periods from the 15th through the 19th centuries. Geographically positioned between Siam to the west and Vietnamese kingdoms to the east, Cambodian rulers often acknowledged overlordship to both, seeking to maintain the kingdom's independence by balancing these competing powers.
When Siamese pressure became too intense, Cambodian kings might appeal to Vietnam for support. When Vietnamese influence became too intrusive, they might turn to Siam.
This balancing act required considerable diplomatic skill and showed Cambodia's agency in a difficult strategic situation, though it also reflected genuine vulnerability. The 16th and 17th centuries saw Ayutthaya reach its zenith as a commercial and political power. The kingdom's location made it an ideal entrepot for trade between China and the Indian Ocean world. European powers, first the Portuguese in the early 16th century, then the Spanish, Dutch, English, and French established trading posts in Ayutthaya, adding to the already diverse community of Chinese, Japanese, Persian, Indian, and other Asian merchants. At its height in the 17th century, Ayutthaya was one of the largest and most cosmopolitan cities in the world, with a population estimated at 1 million people. This period of prosperity and power enabled Ayutthaya to extend considerable influence over Cambodia. Cambodian kings in the late 16th and 17th centuries generally acknowledged Siamese suzerainty, though the practical meaning of this acknowledgement varied. Sometimes it meant little more than periodic tribute missions. At other times, it involved Siamese intervention in Cambodian succession disputes, with Ayutthaya supporting one claimant against another in exchange for that claimant's subsequent loyalty. However, Ayutthaya itself faced severe challenges during these centuries, particularly from Burma. Burmese-Siamese rivalry was intense and recurring, with multiple wars fought between the Burmese Taungoo and later Konbaung dynasties and the Ayutthaya Kingdom. The first Burmese conquest of Ayutthaya in 1569 temporarily disrupted the regional order, reducing Ayutthaya to vassal status under Burma for a period. Ayutthaya recovered its independence under King Naresuan in the 1580s, but Burmese pressure remained a constant concern. These Burmese-Siamese conflicts affected Cambodia's position. When Ayutthaya was weakened by war with Burma, Cambodian kings had more freedom of action. When Ayutthaya was strong and Burma preoccupied elsewhere, Siamese influence over Cambodia increased. The regional system was thus one of shifting balances, where the fortunes of one kingdom affected all the others. The final destruction of Ayutthaya by Burmese forces in 1767 created a period of chaos and transformation. The Burmese army, after a prolonged siege, burned the city, destroyed its temples and palaces, scattered its population, and effectively ended over 4 centuries of Ayutthaya's existence as a political center. The devastation was catastrophic. Much of Ayutthaya's cultural heritage was destroyed, chronicles and historical records were burned, and the kingdom seemed to have met its end. However, the Siamese state proved resilient. A Chinese Dai general named Taksin rallied resistance, expelled the Burmese forces, and established a new capital at Thonburi, across the river from present-day Bangkok. After Taksin's removal in 1782, he was declared insane and executed. One of his generals founded a new dynasty, the Chukri dynasty, which continues to reign in Thailand today, and moved the capital across the river to Bangkok. This transition from Ayutthaya to Thonburi to Bangkok was traumatic but relatively swift, and by the late 18th century, the new Bangkok-based kingdom had re-established Siamese power in the region. The Bangkok period brought renewed and even intensified Siamese influence over Cambodia. In the early 19th century, Cambodian succession disputes once again drew Siamese intervention. When King Ong Chan II of Cambodia died in 1834, conflict arose over succession. Siam supported one claimant while Vietnam supported another. This dispute escalated into direct conflict between Siam and Vietnam, with Cambodia as the battleground. The Vietnamese-Siamese struggle over Cambodia in the 1830s and 1840s was particularly intense and devastating for the Cambodian population. Vietnam, under the Nguyen dynasty, was expanding its territory and influence southward, a process Vietnamese historiography calls Nam Tien, southward march. Vietnamese forces had absorbed the remaining territories of the Cham Kingdom and were exerting increasing control over the Mekong Delta region. Cambodia seemed a natural next target for Vietnamese expansion. Vietnam's approach to Cambodia was significantly more intrusive than Siam's traditional tributary relationship. The Vietnamese attempted to integrate Cambodia more directly into their administrative system, imposing Vietnamese governmental structures, encouraging Vietnamese settlement in Cambodian territories, and promoting Vietnamese cultural practices. Vietnamese officials were appointed to govern Cambodian provinces. There were efforts to replace Cambodian customs with Vietnamese ones, to dress Cambodians in Vietnamese style, and to restructure Cambodian society along Vietnamese lines. This policy met with considerable Cambodian resistance. Rebellions broke out against Vietnamese rule. The attempted cultural transformation was resented. While Cambodians had long experience with Siamese influence, and Siamese and Cambodian cultures shared many elements through their common Khmer heritage and Theravada Buddhist traditions, Vietnamese culture was distinctly different.
Vietnamese governance drew on Chinese Confucian models rather than Indianized Buddhist traditions. The Vietnamese language was tonally and structurally different. The very approach to rule was different, with Vietnam attempting direct administrative control rather than indirect tributary relationship. Siam responded to Vietnamese actions with military force. Siamese armies invaded Cambodia to counter Vietnamese influence. The conflict seesawed back and forth through the 1830s and 1840s, with Cambodia suffering as the battleground. The Cambodian population endured forced relocations, military conscription by both sides, destruction of crops and villages, and the general devastation that accompanies prolonged warfare. The eventual settlement in 1847, brokered partly through mutual exhaustion and partly through diplomatic negotiation, left Cambodia under joint Siamese-Vietnamese suzerainty. This arrangement was deeply unsatisfactory from a Cambodian perspective. The kingdom was effectively partitioned into spheres of influence, with neither overlord willing to cede complete control but neither able to establish exclusive dominance. Cambodian kings were required to navigate between two masters, seeking to preserve what autonomy they could while acknowledging the reality of their subordinate position. Yet even amid these political pressures and military conflicts, cultural exchange and continuity persisted. Cambodian royal ceremonies, classical dance, literature, and religious practices continued, even as they absorbed influences from neighboring cultures and adapted to changing circumstances. The Riamkar, the Cambodian version of the Ramayana epic, shares many elements with the Thai Ramakian but maintains distinctive Khmer characteristics in its narrative details, poetic style, and cultural references. Similarly, temple architecture continued Cambodian artistic traditions while showing influence from changing political circumstances. The famous Cambodian Royal Ballet, now recognized as a UNESCO intangible cultural heritage, maintained its traditions through these centuries of political turmoil. Royal dancers were trained in elaborate techniques passed down through generations. The repertoire drew on classical Hindu-Buddhist mythology, particularly the Riamkar and stories of Apsaras, celestial dancers. The costumes, the movements, the musical accompaniment all preserved elements that connected contemporary performers with classical Angkorian traditions, even as they evolved in response to new contexts. Siamese culture itself, as we've noted repeatedly, had been profoundly shaped by earlier Khmer influence. This created deep cultural connections between the two peoples despite political conflicts. The Thai language contains thousands of Khmer loanwords, particularly in domains like royal vocabulary, religious terminology, arts, and formal speech. A Thai speaker discussing classical literature, royal ceremonies, or Buddhist concepts is likely using many words of Khmer origin. Thai classical arts show extensive Khmer influence. The graceful hand gestures, mudras, of Thai classical dance derive from Khmer traditions, which themselves trace back to Indian sources. The elaborate court ceremonies performed in Bangkok drew on ritual traditions that had roots in Angkor. Thai royal regalia incorporated forms and symbols with Khmer precedents. The prang form in Thai temple architecture, as we've discussed, evolved from Khmer prototypes. This sharing of cultural elements created a complex situation, two peoples who fought periodic wars but whose cultures were deeply intertwined. A Thai visitor to Cambodia could recognize familiar religious practices, architectural forms, and cultural traditions, even while seeing them in distinctively Cambodian expressions. A Cambodian in Siam would encounter much that seemed foreign, but also much that resonated with their own cultural background. Population movements during this period added another layer of complexity. Khmer communities lived in Siamese territory, particularly in the provinces bordering Cambodia. Some had been there for centuries, descendants of populations that had always lived in regions that came under Siamese control. Others had migrated or been relocated more recently. When wars occurred, populations were often forcibly relocated, a common practice in Southeast Asian warfare. Skilled craftsmen, dancers, artisans, and other specialists were particularly likely to be taken to the victor's capital. Similarly, Siamese and Chinese communities existed in Cambodia. Trade brought merchants who settled permanently. Intermarriage created mixed families.
The ethnic map of the region was not one of clear boundaries between Thai and Khmer populations, but rather a gradient with areas of intense mixing, particularly in the border regions.
The 19th century brought new factors that would fundamentally reshape this complex regional picture. European colonial powers were expanding their presence in Southeast Asia with increasing aggression and territorial ambition.
Britain was consolidating control over Burma through a series of wars in 1824 to 1826, 1852, and eventually 1885.
The British also established control over Malaya.
France had growing ambitions in Indochina, seeing Vietnam as a gateway to trade with China and to colonial possessions that would enhance French prestige and power.
France's growing involvement in Vietnam had direct implications for Cambodia.
As French influence over Vietnam increased through the 1850s and early 1860s, with French forces capturing Saigon in 1859 and establishing a colonial foothold in southern Vietnam, Cambodia's position became increasingly precarious. King Norodom of Cambodia, facing pressure from both Siam and the increasingly powerful Vietnamese state now under French influence, made a calculated decision. In 1863, Cambodia became a French protectorate through a treaty signed between King Norodom and representatives of France. From Norodom's perspective, this may have seemed the best option available. French protection offered a counterweight to both Siamese and Vietnamese pressure, potentially allowing Cambodia to maintain its independence and territorial integrity under French patronage rather than being partitioned or absorbed by its neighbors. From France's perspective, Cambodia was a stepping stone to further expansion in Indochina. French colonial strategists envisioned a grand empire in Southeast Asia that would include Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos, providing access to resources and trade routes while enhancing French global power. The establishment of the Protectorate over Cambodia in 1863 was part of this larger imperial project. The implications of this development for Cambodia-Siam relations would be profound. France and Siam would now negotiate over Cambodian borders and Siamese influence in Cambodia. The nature of sovereignty and borders would shift from traditional Southeast Asian concepts to European legal frameworks. The stage was set for the treaties of 1904 and 1907 that would define the modern borders between the two countries, borders drawn not by Southeast Asian kings but by European colonial powers and a modernizing Siamese monarchy seeking to preserve independence through strategic territorial concessions. As the 19th century progressed, the centuries-old pattern of fluid borders, tributary relationships, and cultural exchange was giving way to a new reality: defined territorial boundaries, exclusive sovereignty, and the application of European international law to Southeast Asian affairs. The transition would create legacies and disputes that extend into the present day. Through all these political transformations, the Mekong continued its patient journey to the sea, its waters connecting highlands and lowlands, mountains and delta, carrying sediments and stories, indifferent to the human boundaries drawn and redrawn along its banks. The temples, at Angkor, at Ayutthaya, and countless villages throughout both kingdoms, continued to serve communities that lived, worked, and prayed much as their ancestors had, even as the political landscape around them underwent revolutionary change.
Chapter 7. The Franco-Siamese Treaties and Colonial Borders, 1904 to 1907. The arrival of French colonial power in Southeast Asia introduced a fundamentally different approach to territorial sovereignty.
Unlike the flexible tributary systems that had characterized the region for centuries, European powers demanded precisely defined borders, exclusive territorial control, and formal treaties documenting territorial claims.
The application of these concepts to Cambodia and Siam would create legacies that persist into the 21st century.
France had established a protectorate over Cambodia in 1863, initially leaving Siam with significant influence over Cambodian affairs.
However, French ambitions in Indochina expanded. After colonizing Vietnam and establishing control over Laos, France sought to consolidate its territorial holdings and eliminate Siamese influence from areas France considered part of its sphere.
The first major treaty came in 1893, when a Franco-Siamese crisis over Laos led to French gunboats on the Chao Phraya River in Siam's cession of territories east of the Mekong. This established French dominance but left boundary questions unresolved, particularly regarding Cambodia's western frontier with Siam. The Franco-Siamese Treaty of 1904 addressed some of these issues. Under its terms, Siam transferred the Cambodian provinces of Battambang and Siem Reap, the latter containing the Angkor Temple complex, back to Cambodia under French protection. These territories had been under Siamese control since the 18th century. In exchange, Siam received certain territories and France recognized Siamese sovereignty west of specific boundary lines. Crucially, the 1904 treaty called for a joint commission to delimit the border more precisely. This commission undertook surveys and attempted to map the frontier in detail. However, the work was complex, the terrain difficult, and interpretations of geographical features sometimes ambiguous. The Franco-Siamese Treaty of 1907 made further adjustments. Siam returned additional territories in western Cambodia, including the provinces of Sisophon and the coastal province of Trat, later returned to Thailand. The treaty's text specified that the border would follow watersheds in certain regions, a seemingly objective geographical criterion, but one that would prove problematic in implementation. The Commission produced maps to accompany these treaties. French cartographers created detailed topographical maps showing the boundary. One map in particular, drawn at a scale of 1:200,000, depicted the border in the Dangrek mountain range area, the region where the Temple of Phria Vihir is located. This map would become central to disputes a half-century later. The significance of these treaties extends beyond their immediate territorial transfers. They imposed European concepts of linear borders onto a landscape where political authority had traditionally been more fluid. Villages that had acknowledged multiple overlordships now found themselves definitively in French Cambodia or independent Siam. Ancient temples that had been religious sites transcending political boundaries became national possessions. For Cambodia, the treaties represented both loss and gain. The kingdom regained provinces that had been Khmer heartlands, including Angkor. However, Cambodia's status as a French protectorate meant it had limited agency in these negotiations. France made decisions based on French colonial interests, not necessarily Cambodian preferences. For Siam, the treaties represented territorial losses but also strategic calculation. King Chulalongkorn, Rama V, and his advisors recognized that some accommodation with France was necessary to preserve Siamese independence. By ceding border provinces, Siam avoided the complete colonization that befell its neighbors. This achievement, Siam's survival as an independent kingdom while surrounded by European colonies, came at the cost of significant territory. The border demarcation process itself contained seeds of future disputes. In some areas, the lines drawn on maps did not perfectly match geographical realities. Surveyors faced challenges in mountainous terrain. Different watersheds could be identified depending on methodology. Local populations were rarely consulted about which side of a new border they wished to inhabit. The Temple of Phria Vihir exemplifies these complexities. Built during the Khmer Empire in the 11th and 12th centuries, this Hindu temple complex sits atop a cliff in the Dangrek mountain range. The 1904 to 1907 treaties stated that the border would follow the watershed divide in this area. However, the French-produced map placed the temple on the Cambodian side, even though the watershed principle would arguably place it on the Siamese side. Siam initially raised no objection, but this discrepancy would later become a major source of contention. By 1907, the modern borders between Cambodia and Thailand were essentially established, though not without ambiguities. These borders, drawn largely according to colonial interests and European legal concepts, became the framework within which both nations would develop their modern identities. When Cambodia gained independence from France in 1953, and when both countries took their places as sovereign nations in the international system, they inherited these colonial-era boundaries with all their complexities. The treaties of 1904 to 1907 marked the transition from traditional Southeast Asian conceptions of space and sovereignty to modern international borders. The implications of this transition, the way history and cartography intersect, the role of colonial powers in shaping contemporary disputes, would become apparent as the 20th century unfolded. The old temples stood watching, indifferent to the lines drawn on maps, their stones bearing witness to empires that had risen and fallen long before European powers arrived to declare where one country ended and another began.
Chapter 8. Modern nation-states, Cambodia and Thailand in the 20th century.
The 20th century transformed both Cambodia and Thailand from kingdoms operating within traditional Southeast Asian political structures into modern nation-states participating in an international system dominated by European concepts of sovereignty, citizenship, and territorial integrity. This transformation occurred through vastly different paths, with consequences that would shape their relationship throughout the century and beyond.
Thailand, never formally colonized, underwent modernization reforms initiated by its monarchy.
King Chulalongkorn's reign, 1868–1910, saw the establishment of modern bureaucratic structures, railway construction, and educational reforms, all designed to strengthen the kingdom and demonstrate its ability to govern according to standards European powers would respect. This successful navigation of colonial pressures became a central element of Thai national identity, the pride of being the only Southeast Asian nation to maintain independence. The 1932 revolution transformed Thailand from an absolute to a constitutional monarchy, bringing new political actors into governance. The country's name officially changed from Siam to Thailand in 1939, reflecting nationalist sentiments and an emphasis on Thai ethnic identity. During World War II, Thailand aligned with Japan, a controversial decision that nevertheless allowed the country to avoid occupation and emerge from the war with relative stability. Cambodia's 20th century trajectory was more turbulent. As a French protectorate, Cambodia had limited control over its foreign relations and economic development. French colonial rule brought infrastructure development but also economic exploitation and the crystallization of territorial borders that, as we've seen, drew upon French interpretations of treaties and geographical features. Cambodia gained independence from France in 1953 under King Norodom Sihanouk, who would dominate Cambodian politics for decades. The early independence period saw attempts to maintain neutrality during the Cold War, even as the conflict in Vietnam increasingly affected the region. Sihanouk's policies toward Thailand alternated between cooperation and tension, influenced by broader regional and global dynamics. The late 1960s and 1970s brought catastrophe to Cambodia. The country became entangled in the Vietnam War, with North Vietnamese forces using Cambodian territory for supply routes and the United States conducting bombing campaigns. In 1970, a coup deposed Sihanouk, leading to civil war. The Khmer Rouge, led by Pol Pot, seized power in 1975 and implemented one of the 20th century's most brutal regimes. Over nearly 4 years, the Khmer Rouge's radical policies resulted in the deaths of approximately 1.7 to 2 million Cambodians through execution, starvation, and forced labor. Vietnam's invasion in 1979 ended Khmer Rouge rule but initiated a decade of Vietnamese occupation and continuing civil conflict. Cambodia remained devastated and isolated through the 1980s. The country finally achieved a fragile peace in the early 1990s through UN-brokered agreements, leading to elections in 1993 and a return to constitutional monarchy with Sihanouk restored as king. Thailand, meanwhile, experienced rapid economic development from the 1960s through the 1990s, becoming one of Southeast Asia's newly industrialized countries. However, political instability persisted, with multiple military coups interrupting democratic governance. The tension between military, monarchical, and democratic institutions remained a defining feature of Thai politics. The divergent paths of these two nations, Thailand's relative stability and prosperity versus Cambodia's decades of war and genocide, created significant disparities. By the late 20th century, Thailand had a much larger economy, more developed infrastructure, and greater military capabilities. This imbalance would influence bilateral relations and color each nation's approach to unresolved historical issues. The colonial legacy of border demarcation became increasingly relevant as both countries developed stronger nationalist narratives. In Thailand, the military and nationalist groups emphasized the country's historical resistance to colonialism and its territorial integrity. In Cambodia, emerging from the trauma of the Khmer Rouge era, there was a renewed emphasis on Khmer cultural heritage and the historical extent of the Khmer Empire, including regions now in Thailand. Educational systems in both countries taught versions of history that emphasized national greatness and sometimes portrayed the neighboring country as historical adversaries.
Thai students learned about Ayutthaya's glory and resistance to foreign domination. Cambodian students learned about Angkor's imperial reach and the loss of territories to Siam. These narratives, while containing historical truths, could oversimplify complex centuries of interaction and create frameworks for viewing the neighbor with suspicion.
The Preah Vihear Temple became a focal point for these historical tensions. The temple, whose border location had been ambiguous since the 1904 to 1907 treaties, became the subject of a formal dispute in the 1950s and 1960s.
Cambodia claimed the temple based on the French-produced maps from 1907.
Thailand argued that the watershed principle specified in the treaty text placed the temple on Thai territory, and that Thailand had never formally accepted the map that showed otherwise. In 1962, the International Court of Justice ruled in Cambodia's favor, determining that Thailand had implicitly accepted the map by not objecting when it was produced in 1907 and by subsequent actions that recognized Cambodian authority at the temple. The ICJ ordered Thailand to withdraw military forces from the temple.
Thailand complied, but the ruling remained controversial within Thailand, seen by some as an unjust validation of colonial-era mapmaking over geographical principles. The judgment resolved the temple's sovereignty but left questions about the adjacent land unanswered. Which country controlled the easiest access routes to the temple? Where exactly did the border run in the immediate vicinity? These ambiguities would lead to renewed tensions decades later.
Both countries joined the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, which promoted regional cooperation and peaceful dispute resolution. This framework encouraged economic ties and diplomatic engagement, even as historical grievances persisted. Tourism, trade, and cultural exchange increased, creating new connections between Thai and Cambodian people even as official relations sometimes remained strained. By the end of the 20th century, Cambodia and Thailand were both members of the international community with defined borders, formal diplomatic relations, and membership in regional and global organizations. Yet they carried forward unresolved questions rooted in their shared history, questions about temples, borders, and the interpretation of century-old treaties that had been drawn up by colonial powers with their own agendas. The two nations stood as independent modern states, yet connected by rivers that ignored borders, by cultural traditions with common roots, and by a history so intertwined that understanding one's past required understanding the other's story as well.
Chapter 9.
Border disputes and shared heritage. The Preah Vihear Temple complex sits atop an escarpment in the Dangrek mountain range, its galleries and sanctuaries perched dramatically above the Cambodian plains. Built during the reigns of Khmer Emperors Suryavarman I and II in the 11th and 12th centuries, the temple was dedicated to Shiva and represents one of the finest examples of Khmer architecture. For over 8 centuries, its location high in the mountains meant it held religious significance transcending political boundaries. In the modern era, however, this ancient sacred site became a symbol of contested sovereignty. The roots of the dispute lie in the Franco-Siamese treaties of 1904 to 1907. Article 1 of the 1904 treaty stated that the border in this region would follow the watershed divide, meaning the line separating rivers flowing into different drainage basins. Based on this geographical principle, some interpretations would place Preah Vihear on the Siamese side, as waters from the temple area flow toward Thailand. However, the mixed commission that surveyed the border produced maps, including one at 1:200,000 scale that showed Preah Vihear on the Cambodian side of the border. This map was delivered to Siam in 1908. According to the International Court of Justice's later investigation, Siamese authorities received the map but made no objection at the time. Thai scholars have argued that the discrepancy might not have been immediately apparent, or that Siamese officials trusted French cartographers to follow the treaty's watershed principle.
For decades, the issue remained largely dormant.
French authorities administered the temple as part of Cambodia. After Cambodian independence in 1953, tensions arose when Thailand stationed troops near the temple.
Cambodia protested, and in 1959 brought the case to the International Court of Justice.
The 1962 ICJ judgment favored Cambodia, ruling that Thailand had accepted the map's depiction of the border and was therefore bound by it, despite the watershed argument. The court noted that Thailand had not objected when the map was produced, that Thai officials had visited the temple while it was under French administration without protest, and that Thailand had used the same maps to support its own positions in other border areas.
Thailand withdrew its forces from the temple itself, accepting the ruling while disputing some of its reasoning. The judgment, however, left the demarcation of surrounding areas incomplete. The temple sits atop a cliff, most easily accessed from the Thai side.
The precise location of the border near the temple and the question of which country controlled access routes remain subjects of differing interpretations.
For decades after 1962, the issue simmered rather than boiled. Both countries pursued normal diplomatic and economic relations. Tourism grew, with visitors traveling between Bangkok and Angkor Wat.
The shared cultural heritage, the temples, the religious traditions, the artistic styles remained part of daily life along the border even when politicians in capital cities emphasized national differences. The dispute reignited in the 2000s. In 2008, Cambodia successfully nominated Preah Vihear for UNESCO World Heritage status. Initial Thai government support for the nomination triggered domestic political backlash, with nationalist groups arguing that Thailand was abandoning its territorial claims. The issue became caught up in Thailand's internal political conflicts between rival political factions. Military forces from both sides deployed near the temple. Between 2008 and 2011, several armed clashes occurred in the area, resulting in casualties on both sides and displacement of local communities. Artillery exchanges damaged parts of the temple ancient stones that had survived centuries suddenly vulnerable to modern weapons. The incidents shocked observers who had hoped the 1962 ICJ ruling had definitively resolved the issue. Cambodia returned to the ICJ in 2011, seeking interpretation of the 1962 judgment and clarification of where exactly the border ran near the temple. In 2013, the court ruled that the 1962 judgment applied not just to the temple structure but to the entire promontory and nearby areas, and that both countries should withdraw military forces. Both countries accepted this ruling, and tensions decreased. Yet the underlying dynamics that fuel such disputes remained. Nationalist sentiments in both countries could be mobilized around historical grievances. The shared Khmer heritage of regions now in Thailand, the Khmer temples at Phai Mai, Phanom Rung, and elsewhere, became contested cultural property. Were these Thai national treasures or evidence of Cambodian historical claims? The complexity becomes even more apparent when considering the local populations in border areas. Many communities have cross-border family ties, speak dialects influenced by both Khmer and Thai, and practice cultural traditions that blend elements from both societies. For them, the hard border represented an artificial imposition that complicated lived realities. Other border areas beyond Preah Vihear also saw tensions. Maritime boundaries in the Gulf of Thailand, where both countries claim overlapping areas potentially rich in oil and gas reserves, represent another dimension of territorial dispute. Villages and farmland along the land border have experienced periodic tensions when different interpretations of where exactly the border runs affect people's daily lives and livelihoods. The shared heritage complicates these disputes in profound ways.
Both Thais and Cambodians revere Theravada Buddhism. Both countries claim the Ramayana epic and its Southeast Asian adaptations as central to their cultural identity. Thai classical dance shows clear derivation from Khmer traditions, while also having evolved distinctively. The UNESCO listing of traditional Cambodian dance generated controversy when some in Thailand felt that shared cultural practices were being claimed exclusively by Cambodia. These cultural disputes reflect deeper questions about how modern nation-states relate to pre-modern civilizations. The Khmer Empire at its height was not Cambodia in any modern sense, it was a pre-modern state with different conceptions of territory, identity, and sovereignty. Similarly,
early Thai kingdoms were not Thailand as it exists today. Yet nationalist narratives in both countries project current identities backward, claiming exclusive ownership of historical legacies that were in reality more complex and fluid. Scholars and cultural practitioners in both countries have increasingly recognized that the heritage is genuinely shared, that centuries of interaction, influence, and exchange created cultural forms that belong to the region as a whole.
Khmer inscriptions in Thailand are part of Thai history even as they connect to Cambodian heritage.
Thai artistic influences in Cambodia reflect historical interactions that enriched both cultures.
The challenge is translating these scholarly insights into popular understanding and political will.
When territorial disputes arise, nationalistic narratives tend to dominate public discourse. Social media can amplify tensions, with inflammatory content spreading faster than nuanced historical analysis. Yet there are also voices in both countries calling for emphasis on shared heritage, mutual respect, and resolution of disputes through international legal mechanisms rather than military force. The temples themselves offer a powerful reminder of connection. A Thai visitor to Angkor Wat sees architectural forms echoed in Thai temples.
A Cambodian visitor to Bangkok's Grand Palace recognizes aesthetic traditions with Khmer roots. The stone carvings, the religious symbolism, the artistry, these transcend modern borders and speak to deep cultural continuities. As the 21st century progressed, questions remained about how Cambodia and Thailand would navigate their complex relationship. Would the emphasis be on disputed territories and competing nationalisms, or on shared heritage and mutual benefit? Could historical understanding lead to reconciliation, or would selective memory fuel continuing tensions? The Dangrek Mountains continue their patient existence, geological formations far older than any human kingdom.
The temples built atop them endure, their stones scarred now by modern conflicts but still standing, still sacred, still beautiful monuments to a civilization that once united much of the region, now symbolizing the divisions and connections that define Cambodia and Thailand's relationship.
Chapter 10.
Today's Challenges, 21st Century Relations. The third decade of the 21st century has brought both encouraging developments and renewed challenges to Cambodia-Thailand relations. The two countries share over 800 kilometers of land border, extensive economic ties, and millions of people with familial and cultural connections across that border. Yet historical disputes, political dynamics within each country, and competing strategic interests continue to generate friction.
Recent years have seen periodic border tensions.
In January 2025, reports emerged of military clashes in border areas, with casualties on both sides. Such incidents, while limited in scope compared to past conflicts, demonstrate that the border remains sensitive. Each flare-up revives historical grievances, with commentators in both countries referencing centuries of conflict while often omitting the equally long history of peaceful interaction and cultural exchange.
The economic relationship between the two countries has grown substantially. Thailand is a major trading partner for Cambodia, and Thai investment plays a significant role in Cambodia's economy. Millions of Cambodian workers have sought employment in Thailand, sending remittances that support families and contribute to Cambodia's economy. Tourism flows in both directions, with Thais visiting Angkor and Cambodians traveling to Bangkok. Yet this economic interdependence exists alongside significant disparities. Thailand's economy is approximately 20 times larger than Cambodia's.
This imbalance affects negotiations over shared resources, border demarcation, and regional issues. Cambodia has increasingly sought partnerships with other powers, particularly China, to balance Thai influence and pursue its own development agenda. The 1962 and 2013 International Court of Justice rulings on Priya Bihir established important precedents for resolving disputes through international law. Both countries have generally respected these judgments, even when controversial domestically. This represents progress, a commitment to legal mechanisms rather than military force for settling disagreements. However, full demarcation of the land border remains incomplete. A 2000 bilateral agreement committed both countries to completing border surveys and placing boundary markers. Progress has been made, with many sections now clearly marked, but disputes over specific areas persist.
The process requires technical surveys, bilateral negotiations, and domestic political will, any of which can stall under pressure from nationalist constituencies opposed to perceived concessions. Maritime boundary delimitation in the Gulf of Thailand presents another complex issue. Both countries claim overlapping areas potentially containing oil and gas. They established an overlapping claims area in the 1990s and discussed joint development, but definitive agreements have proven elusive. Energy resources make compromise difficult, and domestic opposition to any deal seen as giving up national territory constrains negotiators. Internal political dynamics in both countries affect bilateral relations. Thailand has experienced significant political instability over the past 2 decades, with multiple coups and deep political divisions. Changes in Thai government can mean shifts in policy toward Cambodia. Similarly, Cambodia's domestic political situation, including concerns about democratic governance and human rights, affects how international partners, including Thailand, engage with the country. Regional frameworks offer opportunities for cooperation. Both countries are ASEAN members, and the organization's emphasis on consensus and non-interference has provided a forum for dialogue. ASEAN agreements on trade, connectivity, and cultural exchange create frameworks that benefit both nations. Yet ASEAN's limitations, its reluctance to address members' internal affairs, and its difficulty in resolving members' bilateral disputes mean the organization cannot solve all problems. The broader strategic environment of Southeast Asia in the 2025 context adds complexity. Great power competition between the United States and China affects regional relationships. Cambodia has developed close ties with China, including significant Chinese investment in military cooperation. Thailand has traditionally balanced between major powers, maintaining alliances with the United States while expanding economic ties with China. These different approaches to external powers can create tensions when regional issues arise. Climate change presents a shared challenge that could foster cooperation or exacerbate tensions. The Mekong River system, which both countries depend on, faces threats from upstream dams, changing rainfall patterns, and environmental degradation. Addressing these challenges requires regional cooperation, but disputes over water rights and dam construction have sometimes heightened tensions rather than building trust. Cultural diplomacy offers pathways for building understanding. Educational exchanges, joint cultural programs, and collaborative heritage preservation can help younger generations in both countries understand their interconnected histories. UNESCO's recognition of shared heritage sites and practices, rather than assigning them exclusively to one nation, reflects growing international acceptance that cultural traditions often transcend modern borders. Some encouraging developments have emerged from civil society. Organizations in both countries work on cross-border issues such as migrant worker rights, environmental conservation, and cultural preservation. Researchers collaborate on historical and archaeological studies. Artists from both countries perform together. These connections, while less visible than military tensions or political disputes, represent the daily reality of Thailand-Cambodia relations for many people. The prospect for the future depends partly on how each country chooses to remember and teach history. Does the emphasis fall on the conflicts, the sacking of Angkor, the territorial disputes, the military clashes, or on the cultural synthesis, the centuries of exchange, the shared artistic and religious traditions? Both narratives contain truth. The question is which aspects of history inform contemporary policy and popular attitudes. There are reasons for cautious optimism. Both countries have committed, at least officially, to resolving disputes peacefully. International legal mechanisms exist and have been used. Economic interdependence creates incentives for stability. Younger generations in both countries are connected through technology, culture, and travel in ways previous generations were not. Yet challenges remain formidable. Nationalist sentiments can quickly mobilize around historical grievances. Border areas contain communities whose daily lives are affected by territorial disputes. Domestic political leaders in both countries sometimes find it useful to invoke external threats or historical wrongs to rally support.
The colonial legacy of imprecisely drawn borders continues to generate practical problems requiring resolution.
The story of Cambodia and Thailand is ultimately about the tension between connection and separation.
Geography, history, culture, and economy connect them inextricably. Yet modern nationalism, competing interests, and painful memories create separation. The challenge for the 21st century is to honor both dimensions, to recognize that they are neighbors with distinct national identities and legitimate interests, while also acknowledging deep ties that transcend borders.
The rivers continue to flow.
The Mekong, the Chao Phraya, and the countless smaller waterways that cross and define the region carry water that knows no nationality. Monsoon rains fall on both countries, nourishing rice fields that feed both peoples. The temples, whether at Angkor, or Ayutthaya, or Preah Vihear, or in cities and villages throughout both nations, continue to serve as places of worship and reflection, reminding visitors of continuities that stretch back over a millennium. Perhaps the most important lesson from this long shared history is that the relationship between Cambodia and Thailand has never been simple. It has always been characterized by both conflict and cooperation, influence flowing in multiple directions, moments of war alternating with long periods of peace. The 21st century presents new contexts and challenges, but the fundamental reality remains: these are neighbors whose histories are too intertwined to ignore, whose futures are too connected to pursue in isolation. As we reflect on this long history, we might consider that the modern nation-state, with its emphasis on exclusive territorial sovereignty and clear boundaries, is itself a relatively recent development. The region's pre-modern arrangements, with their tributary relationships, fluid borders, and overlapping cultural zones, were different but not inherently inferior. They allowed for complexity and ambiguity in ways that modern systems struggle to accommodate. The challenge, perhaps, is not to recreate the past but to find ways within modern frameworks to acknowledge complexity, honor shared heritage, and resolve disputes with patience and good faith.
The history shows that Cambodia and Thailand have much more in common than divides them.
The work of the present and future is to ensure that this historical truth finds expression in contemporary relations, that the shared past becomes a foundation for a peaceful shared future. The sun sets over the Dangrek Mountains, casting long shadows across the temples and the forests, the villages and the border markers. Tomorrow it will rise again, on both sides of the border, illuminating a region whose history is rich, whose cultures are vibrant, and whose future remains to be written by those who remember the past with wisdom rather than wielding it as a weapon.
This episode was created as a peaceful exploration of history, emphasizing factual accuracy, contextual understanding, and respect for both nations' perspectives. The goal is to promote historical knowledge as a foundation for understanding, not to advocate for any particular position in ongoing disputes. If this story brought you calm, I'd appreciate it if you could like, share, and leave a quiet comment about which historical time or place you'd like to drift into next. Good night.